Addison and I are back. This time we are looking at four more rookies that aren't necessarily household names just yet, right? We're not going to talk about Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors or Caleb Williams or Roma Dunze, the players that we've been talking about for months. Instead, we're going a little bit further down, right? We've both done this once already, so I've given out, I think, 3 or 4 names. Addison's given out 3 or 4 names. This time we're back. We got 2 more each, so I'll kick it off. Our first one is going to be none other than Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. Now, I think in about a month, he'll probably be closer to a household name. He should be considered a back end of the first rookie pick. I truly think that's where we end up with him at the end of this cycle. Right now, when it comes to draft profiles and things like that, on tape, he is spectacular. Like, he is showing you every single thing you want to see from a wide receiver on tape that is an early declare. The downside of Mitchell, and why I think we may ultimately end up with getting a little bit of pushback on him, is going to be the analytical profile. Late breakout age, low dominator rating, low target share, all of the things you really don't want. So I very well could see this being a guy, Addison especially, with his marker system, is not in on. And I get it. But when you watch Mitchell play, it is obvious to see what I think NFL teams are going to fall in love with, right? The reason I think Mitchell ends up being a first-round pick in the NFL draft is his tape, because in a limited role, he has looked spectacular with Texas this year. The size is impossible to miss, right? 6'4", 190, not as heavy as you would like, but has height for days, and you can't teach height. We talk about that all the time. And on top of that, his route running, again, for someone that is 6'4", is just something you don't typically see in the NFL. It's just not common, right? Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is 6'4", is a better route runner. He's a freak of nature and a generational type wide receiver. Mitchell, on the other hand, while he's not up to Marvin Harrison's level, he's probably going to end up being one of the better route runners in this draft for guys that are over 6 feet tall. He is a deep threat. He is consistently open down the field, and that just comes with his route running, right? The nuance, the tempo, the footwork, all of those things I think are going to make him a nightmare to cover at the next level. What he doesn't have is obviously the production to go along with these things that look flashy on tape. So it's going to be a balancing act. I ultimately think people are going to fall in love with the tools. That's the reason he could be a back half of the first pick in the NFL draft. I think the Buffalo Bills make a lot of sense. Kansas City would make sense as well. So there's going to be a couple locations he could land that I think is going to help him skyrocket up our rookie draft boards as well. So a name you need to keep on your radar moving forward. Adonai Mitchell, do not forget it. And the other wide receiver I do want to bring up is Jalen McMillan out of Washington. Now, I think he's probably the worst of the 3, right? Between him, Adunze, and Jalen Polk. I think those are better wide receivers. I think they're going to have better careers, better fantasy careers. But Jalen McMillan is a player that could be a very high floor, lower ceiling type of wide receiver at the next level. And ultimately, that's fine. When it comes to rookie drafts, expect him, I think, late second, early third as a day 2 pick in the NFL. I think that's going to end up being his sweet spot, because what he does well is typically what you see from wide receivers that have long, successful, or sustainable careers in the NFL. He's a good route runner. He is in a well above average athlete. While he may not be like a true, 4.3 burner, he should run in the 4.4s or low 4.5s. And on top of all that, he mixes both of those to become a very good yak player. So his skill set, I think, is going to be very, very beneficial in the NFL, because who doesn't want a guy that's consistently open, can take the top off a defense, and when he gets the ball in his hands, can, pick up extra yardage. I think he would have had a better draft capital last year, right? In a smaller class, coming off of a breakout redshirt sophomore season. Instead, he comes back, right? Injures his leg, isn't really the same player this year, and that likely hurts his draft stock, right? He's no longer that early declare. He is not as productive as a redshirt junior. So these things, I think, are going to end up pushing him down NFL draft boards and subsequently push him down the rookie draft boards as well. That's why, again, I think late round 2, early round 3 is going to be his sweet spot. If you had put him in last year's class, he's probably an early second round pick, just because that class was very weird and it felt soft, at least coming in. Obviously, it turned out to be full of superstars. But Jalen McMillan, I think, would have been right there with the rest of that group.
All right, so Justin's just given you guys a couple of late round wide receivers, but he hasn't given you the best late round wide receiver, and that is Jacob Cowing from Arizona. Now, Cowing is a massive diamond in the rough. He had some massively productive seasons throughout his college career, starting first at UTEP with over 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns as a junior in 2021, before then transferring to Arizona and posting seasons of 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2022, and then 850 yards and 13 touchdowns in 2023, which was a down year in terms of yards, yes, but he battled injuries throughout the year that he was able to play through, but wasn't as effective as the 2 years before. However, Cowing did post some monstrous games this past season against elite competition, like 70 yards and a touchdown against Washington, 88 yards and 4 touchdowns against USC, and then 150 yards and 2 touchdowns against Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. And his tape is every bit as good as you would expect from a wide receiver with those numbers over the past 3 seasons. He is a fantastic route runner with the twitchiness and suddenness to break in and out of routes. He has a strong ability to sell his route movement quickly to set DBs up just to beat them. Everything about his game is extremely fluid, it's very well paced, and he works extremely well as a route technician out of the slot and in the short to intermediate part of the field. And then he has the speed to be dangerous in the open field and rack up a bunch of yards after catch. Some people might write him off due to his size at 5'11", 175 pounds, but we have seen numerous examples lately of receivers in that size range succeeding in the NFL. But a lot of his weaknesses really stem from that size. He is not great at beating press coverage when defensive backs are able to get their hands on him early on in his routes, and he's not a contested catch wide receiver either. He very much plays within his size and space, and he doesn't really do well playing beyond that. He also had some drop issues early on in his career, but he did clean that up pretty well over the last couple of years with only 5 drops in 2023 on over 100 targets. So in a class that actually has a ton of big-bodied outside wide receivers, Cowing actually sets himself apart as a more dynamic slot weapon, much like a Zay Flowers or a Josh Downs type of receiver, or maybe even a Deontay Johnson type on the higher end of that spectrum. I really wouldn't be surprised to see him drafted on day 2, and if he lands somewhere where he could be the wide receiver 2, like a Josh Downs in Indianapolis, or even have the upside to be like the wide receiver 1A like Zay Flowers in Baltimore or Deontay Johnson in Pittsburgh, then Jacob Cowing would be a fantastic round 2 pick in rookie drafts this year. But if you guys are looking for a deep running back name that could make an immediate impact in the NFL in the right situation, then I want you guys to take a look at Ray Davis out of Kentucky. Davis has had a pretty fantastic college career for a 5-year player. He originally started at Temple, where he broke out for over 900 yards and 8 touchdowns as a freshman. Then 2020 was that pandemic year. He only played a couple of games. Then he transferred to Vanderbilt in 2021, where he rushed for over 200 yards and a touchdown in 3 games played, but then suffered a season-ending toe injury. But he was back and healthy in 2022, rushed for over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns, and also added an additional 29 receptions out of the backfield. And then he decided to transfer to Kentucky for 2023, rushed for over 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns, while adding another 300 yards and 7 touchdowns on 33 receptions this past season. I really don't want to get ahead of myself, but Ray Davis is already on my watch list for that can't miss late round running back prospect of this 2024 class, where he would join other late round running backs like Aaron Jones, Elijah Mitchell, Tyler Algier, and then to be determined on what happens with Chase Brown. But Davis is just a really, really talented player and can do just about everything that you could ask a running back to do in football. He is great between the tackles with good patience and vision behind the line of scrimmage. His footwork is really strong and he's able to weave his way effectively through gaps in the defense. His overall size of 5'10", 215 pounds makes him the perfect size for a workhorse in today's NFL, and he has all the benefits of that size, including the power and ability to always fall forward to finish runs, but also having the effective quickness and contact balance to break tackles and get into the open field. And as I just mentioned, he has amazing upside as a receiver out of the backfield too, with over 60 receptions over the last 2 years in college and over 90 receptions total through just 44 career games. He's great on screens, he's great out in the flat, wheel routes, cut routes, everything that you want from a running back who can operate as a receiver out of the backfield. He has all of it. And I think he's also good enough to run routes from the slot as well. We didn't really see him operate like that, but I think he could be utilized in that way in certain formations in the NFL. Really, his only issues are just kind of a lack of burst and doesn't really have that top end straight line speed. He's not slow, but he's not elite either in that category. He's probably going to run a high 4.5 or even maybe a low 4.6 40-yard dash, which again, isn't great, but it's also not horrible as well. But outside of all of that, Davis just does everything really, really well as arguably one of the most pro-ready backs in this 2024 class. He reminds me a lot of an Alfred Morris type of player who began his NFL career with 3 1,000-yard seasons after being drafted on day 3, or maybe a more recent example is a guy like a James Robinson, another immediate contributor in the NFL until his unfortunate Achilles injury just kind of derailed everything that he had going for him. So for Davis, it'll all just come down to landing spot on day 3. Can he land somewhere that could vault his draft stock into round 2 for rookie drafts as an immediate contributor? But even if he is drafted into more of a handcuff backup kind of role in the NFL, I'm still going to be all over him in the 3rd or even the 4th rounds of rookie drafts. But you guys are loving these videos on under the radar prospects in the 2024 class. But if you missed our other 2 videos with even more underrated players, then you guys can check out either of those videos right over here.